Did you know that deja vu can be a sign of epilepsy? In September of 2016, I had two major seizures within a week and wound up in the hospital. About a month later, I was diagnosed with epilepsy. According to the Epilepsy Foundation, about every 8 people in 1,000 have epilepsy, and while that doesn't seem like too many people, it is a lot more than you think. And most times, you won't even know if someone has epilepsy, and I know that I had no idea. Today I want to tell you a little bit about what epilepsy is, some treatment options, and most importantly, how to help someone who is having a seizure in front of you. You never know when you're going to be with someone who suddenly has a medical emergency, and it's important to know how to help them. In some cases, people can be sued if they don't help, and they usually lose those lawsuits and end up owing someone a lot of money. In my experience, my friends had no idea what to do, and while they were trying to help me, they wound up doing things that put me in more danger and could have caused me a lot of harm. I want to begin with informing you about what exactly epilepsy is. The Foundation of Epilepsy has defined it as a condition of the brain causing seizures. A seizure is a disruption of the electrical communication between neurons in your brain. Epilepsy is typically characterized by unpredictable seizures, and anyone can develop epilepsy at any time of their life. Most times it's caused by head trauma, strokes, heart attacks, and those who have autism can also suffer from seizures. As I said, epilepsy can occur out of the blue, and the cause can't be found, and that's exactly what's happened to me. I went through a lot of testing for weeks, but they've never been able to find a reason as to why this was happening, just that I have actually been living with epilepsy and having minor seizures for years and no one ever noticed. Many seizures will happen suddenly without any warning, but sometimes the person who suffers from them can have a feeling that they're about to seize. And there are many different names for this, but the ones that I've heard most are an aura, or they call it a feeling of doom. It's hard to explain what this feels like, but the best description that I can come up with is that it feels like this pit in your stomach where you just know something bad is going to happen. I usually feel like I'm about to die, and it's terrifying to have. But not all seizures involve convulsing, which is why I had no idea that I had epilepsy. The Epilepsy Society says that some people can seem vacant, wander around, or seem very confused as they seize. There's also something called the myoleptic jerk. It's very similar to the hypnic jerk, which is when you're sleeping and then you suddenly just jerk awake. You feel like you're falling off a cliff. That's totally normal to have, but the myoleptic jerk happens while you are awake. You just suddenly twitch like that. And I had that a lot, but I just never thought it was anything odd. During and after a seizure, memory loss can occur, which is something that I experience, and it's very disorienting, and these are all signs of epilepsy as well. Secondly, I want to talk about the treatments for epilepsy. Unfortunately, there is no cure, but thankfully there's medication that's available for use, and there are generic versions so that you don't have to pay as much money. Just like all medications, there are side effects to these. My neurologists like to call them the three dwarves. They can make you sleepy, dopey, or grumpy, which aren't the best, especially not when combined, but it's a lot better than having a seizure a week. I've been on 2 different kinds of medications. One was called Lamictal, and the other is called Keppra. You have to work up slowly on these medications because if you go to the full dose too quickly, you will end up getting a bad rash all over your body, and it can land you in the hospital and even kill you. So it's really important to listen to what your neurologists and pharmacists tell you to do when it comes to this medication. Johns Hopkins Medicine also says that there are surgeries available to help limit the number of seizures that you have, which is really amazing. Lastly, I want to talk about one of the most important things, which is how to help someone who is having a seizure. When I had my seizures, my friends didn't necessarily know what was going on, and even if they did, they wouldn't have known how to help me. And they actually did the exact things you are not supposed to do. They picked me up and carried me somewhere and restrained me, which can cause a lot more injuries to me. The second time I seized, I wound up in the hospital, and they had carried me again, and they laid me on my back, which can actually kill the person who is seizing, because they could choke on their tongue, which isn't technically possible, but what happens is your tongue can flop back, and it can close up your airway, so you can die from that. And then you can also choke and die on puke, if that happens. I was told later on that they tried to get me to drink water while I was lying on my back and unconscious, which is not a good idea. But what you should do is you should ease the person to the floor gently if you can. You need to scan the area around them and remove any objects that they could hit, especially if there are sharp objects around. It's extremely important to move those. If you're able to put a soft object under their head and try to loosen any strings that could make it hard to breathe. If I was wearing this necklace, they would probably try to remove it so that it doesn't pull and so that I don't choke. Typically, you do not need to call for an ambulance when someone is seizing unless it is the first time they've ever seized, if the seizure lasts for 5 or more minutes, or if they have rapid fire seizures, which is a seizure after another seizure, and it just continues because they can die from that. Please do not hold the person down or put anything in their mouth or give CPR or offer food and or water during the seizure. Although epilepsy does not affect as many people as most genetic diseases does, it's very important to know, to be aware of what exactly it is and how to help them. And now you know what epilepsy is, some treatments, and the most important part, which is how to help someone who is having a seizure.